African indigenous vegetables have been part of the African diet for as long as we can remember. But did you know that these vegetables that were once considered wild and poor man's food are now a source of livelihood and high nutritional value? If you grew up in a typical African home, then you know that the consumption of exotic vegetables was considered a sign of financial stability and high social status. The belief that consumption of exotic vegetables amounted to financial stability or high social status can be largely attributed to lifestyle attitude, the long preparation requirements for indigenous vegetables, and the seasonality of these vegetables. Lifestyle attitude prompted people to have a preference for meat dishes, exotic vegetables, and other commercial crops that were perceived to be of higher status than indigenous vegetables. The preparation of indigenous vegetables, from plucking of leaves from their stalks to eventual consumption, is more tedious and time-involving than exotic vegetables. And since indigenous vegetables require more preparation time, most formal employees and business households don't have so much time to spare and would rather opt for a quick meal. The distance covered to access fresh vegetables that are presumably sold by high-valued stores which are sparsely located, especially in urban places, made people lose interest in African indigenous vegetables because most consumers shifted their attention to other accessible alternatives. African indigenous vegetables are seasoned crops. They are largely affected by two seasons, the rainy seasons and the dry seasons, which then affect the demand and supply. Despite these setbacks, the African indigenous vegetable food industry has defied the odds to become lucrative. For example, in Kakamega County, the price of a handful of managu or saga increases from 10 Kenyan shillings at 5 a.m. to 40 Kenyan shillings at 5 p.m. At the same time, the price of managu and saga retails at 60 Kenyan shillings in supermarkets and 150 Kenyan shillings when served with ugali in restaurants. In Nairobi County, a bundle of indigenous vegetables ranges from 15 Kenyan shillings to 25 Kenyan shillings per bundle, depending on market location. On the other hand, roadside stalls sell their vegetables at an average of 15 Kenyan shillings per bundle. Supermarkets in Nairobi sell their vegetables at an average price of 20 to 25 Kenyan shillings, depending on location, whereas restaurants sell a plate of managu at an average price of 200 Kenyan shillings. In each 2 to 4 times a week, a Kenyan household consumes African indigenous vegetables. African indigenous vegetables are types of plant species that are edible as green and leafy vegetables, with more than 220 species in Kenya forming part of traditional diets. The most common varieties in Kenya include African nightshade, locally known as managu, amaranthus, locally known as terere, spider plant, locally known as saga, and slenderleaf, locally known as mito, among other popular traditional vegetables. These vegetables are locally important for the sustainability of economies, human nourishment, health, and social systems. The vegetables provide the much-needed macro and micronutrients which are critical for combating micronutrient deficiencies. They are known to be rich in vitamins, proteins, minerals, and micronutrients. Rural households relied on their consumption to meet their daily requirement of micronutrients, especially vitamin A and iron. Production of African indigenous vegetables has for many years been on subsistence basis in rural and peri-urban areas where they sprout as weeds in plots with a primary crop during cropping season and in some cases intercropped with cereals, legumes, root crops and fruit trees. To get a better understanding of the African indigenous vegetable industry, we journeyed to Huisero, Kakamega County, an active production region in western Kenya, to talk to a group of farmers who are keen on capitalizing on increasing popularity of African indigenous vegetables. At the heart of Huisero, these farmers, known as Huisero organic farmers, have seen the opportunity in the African indigenous vegetable industry and have every intention of exploiting it. As they sit under the shade of this eucalyptus tree, they exchange ideas on how best they can increase their production of African indigenous vegetables to meet the ever-rising demand. These vegetables generate an estimate income of 80 million Kenyan shillings in informal markets and 150 million Kenyan shillings in formal markets, with local farmers like the Huisero organic farmers earning up to 30,000 Kenyan shillings.
Profit.
In terms of profit, if the vegetables do well and if you get good prices for them, you can expect up to 30,000 Kenyan shillings. For example, if you use your piece of land to plant vegetables like saga, you should definitely expect some good returns. The African indigenous vegetable food industry is a substantive job creator in which many cases is the foundation in which many rural economies are built. The local markets are extremely important to farmers. These markets have a great potential for growth when supplied with quality, consistent and fresh vegetable supplies. The three main markets are supermarkets, direct sales to retailers and the informal markets. However, the production of consistent and fresh vegetable supplies has become a major problem because the vegetable supply chain is affected by seasons. During the rainy season, for example, the vegetables are washed away, and during the dry season, there is little to no water to sustain their growth, leading to losses during production. These varying seasons cause a low supply of vegetables amid a high demand for them. One of the challenges we face as farmers is harsh climate. For example, you can plant your vegetables and then the rain becomes too much. And when the rain is too much, vegetables like sutsa and saga do not do well in too much water. In the long run, because of too much rain, the vegetables do not sprout as expected. In the instance that they sprout successfully, chances are that they will be characterized by stunted growth. In other cases, you might plant your vegetables and then by bad luck, there is no rain to water the plants. This often results in poor germination, and so the farmers incur losses. High levels of perishability also affects the vegetable supply chain. The normal shelf life of fresh vegetables is 2 to 3 days, and by the third day, if not consumed, they begin to wither and become unattractive to customers, rendering losses to farmers. Another major problem comes up when we harvest the vegetables and we don't get buyers, probably because the markets have an oversupply. This means that the vegetables will wither and become inedible. Sometimes, in a bid to salvage the situation, we opt to consume the vegetables at home. But still, this is not a viable solution because the vegetables are usually too much to be consumed by one family. The farmers have also found creative ways of dealing with perishability of indigenous vegetables, and one of these ways is by drying them to keep them edible for longer. As a farmers group, when we feel like the vegetables will wither, we dry them and keep them. And then in case we want to consume them or sell, it is required that the vegetables are soaked in water early enough before being prepared. In the long run, the vegetables serve just like freshly harvested vegetables. In other cases, we opt to sell the vegetables at very low prices to whoever is willing to buy, and then whatever is left can be shared among the members for consumption at home.
Challenges that the farmers will face is marketing of their crops, especially these groups that we are talking about. And so they can produce those vegetables, but indigenous vegetables also are produced seasonally because of the rains. All the farming in Western Kenya is mostly done, it's rain-fed. And so when the rains come, the farmers produce the indigenous vegetables in large quantities. And sometimes you find the local market is saturated, and therefore they need market to be able to sell the extra. And so the market has been a challenge. And then you will also find that preservation methods for indigenous vegetables are still very traditional. So you'll find, for example, after harvest, they try to keep it fresh by spreading it in a cool place, sprinkling with water, and those methods are not really sustainable because eventually the temperatures rise, and after 2 or 3 days, the vegetables spoil. So that preservation and storage bit has also been a challenge. The other thing we found out recently is that, in marketing, when they want to sell the vegetables to the city and to the other towns, they would buy the vegetables and load them on buses. And these buses travel at night. So with the COVID-19 regulation, it has been a big challenge because they cannot be able to transport those vegetables to arrive in cities like Nakuru, Nairobi in time. For instance, or overnight, when the buses will travel overnight, the vegetables are cool, the temperatures are low, so the vegetables stay fresh overnight and they arrive on the markets when they are still fresh the next morning. But right now, they have to load the vegetables on the buses very early in the morning, say like, for example, 6 in the morning, and then the vegetables are traveling during the day when the temperatures are higher. So by the time they arrive in the cities, it's already the vegetables have already been affected by the high temperatures, and so they can't be sold the same day, so they have to be sold the other day. So also the rate of spoilage actually goes up. The market for AIVs is totally unstructured. And so that is why farmers, despite the benefits that they could actually have from these vegetables, the production level is unstructured. Marketing is unstructured. And so the farmer produces, they do not know where to take the vegetables to. So we need to be able to structure the marketing. We also need to improve the preservation methods for these ALVs so that they can last longer, they can be able to reach the consumer without the post-harvest losses that we have mentioned.
To reduce these losses and improve productivity and profitability from farm to fork, there is need for sustainable production practices, cold chain management systems, post-harvest management systems, and control logistical systems to reduce the time and distance the fresh vegetables take to reach the customers. That is why Iron Kenya is investing in new dry and cold chain technologies to ensure stability and growth in the supply chain of vegetables. The African indigenous vegetable industry produced an estimate of 265,492 metric tons in the year 2017, but with new innovations, partnerships, logistical infrastructure, and vegetable preservation processes, the production rates will go higher as the demand is already on the rise by 135% in both urban and rural populations. These demands have been coupled up by the nutrition knowledge that African indigenous vegetables possess over the exotic vegetables available in the food systems.
Eat indigenous vegetables. Don't rely on, say, for example, supplements. They cannot compare to these vegetables. Eat indigenous vegetables like never before. As I've said, they are very rich in protein. They are very rich in micronutrients. They are rich in phytochemicals like polyphenols. These are the ones that help to build our immunity and fight bodies. Help our bodies to fight diseases. And they also are very rich in fiber. You know the role of fiber, like increasing bulk, so they can help to be able to mitigate effects of, let's say, for example, overnutrition, and so we are able to live healthy lives when we are consuming indigenous vegetables. So I would encourage us to continue consuming. Those who have not started, start consuming. All people, from the young to the old, let us all eat indigenous vegetables for our health. I believe that we will live longer, we'll have better lifestyles, and I'm sure that you will never be tired of eating them because they are a variety. So every time you are making, let's say, for example, ugali, you don't have to eat one type of indigenous vegetable. So today you can make cowpeas, tomorrow you can make spider plant, the next day you have managu, another day you have mito. There are so many types, and so you will enjoy consuming these. So I encourage all of us, let us eat these vegetables. They are good for health.
With these kinds of health benefits, the high demand for African indigenous vegetables can only be sustained by a controlled, efficient, and quality supply chain involving food policies, uptake innovations, diversified production practices, dry and cold chain management, and logistical infrastructure. The whole African indigenous vegetable supply chain starts and ends with the consumer being supplied with fresh and healthy vegetables on a consistent and quality basis.